Welcome back to all. Today we are going to understand the topic of phases of germination and the various factors that affect the process of germination. Right, so we first need to understand what is germination and what kind of seeds can germinate. Right, so viable seeds are the seeds that can actually germinate. So all the viable seeds that have overcome dormancy, right? So I think now we all are clear with the understanding of dormancy. We already have discussed the topic of dormancy, right? It is the state where the seeds they go into dormant periods, though there might be favorable conditions, but sometimes the embryo might not have developed from inside, or there may be other reasons because of which the seeds can go into the period of dormancy. So from this point you can understand that viable seeds are the seeds that can go into the period of dormancy, and then later on they can overcome this process of dormancy, and after overcoming dormancy these seeds will germinate either naturally or artificially. So this means that the seeds can germinate in natural conditions, or it can also germinate in artificial laboratory conditions, and this actually germinates when it will receive proper environmental conditions, right? So a viable seed is a seed that has capability to germinate, and this will as these seeds, viable seeds, will receive the proper environmental conditions, they will germinate, right? And by germination we mean that the seedlings need to come out, the embryo need to come out, right, of the seed. Inside the seed there is embryo which has to come out to become a new plant. So then that process is called germination. So such seeds that wait for environmental conditions to germinate are called quiescent seeds, right? So another term that we can give to viable seeds are quiescent seeds, right? So what are quiescent seeds? These are seeds that are waiting for the proper environmental conditions to germinate, and these seeds are called as quiescent seeds, right? So a viable seed could go into the period of dormancy and become a dormant seed, and later on, after overcoming dormancy, it can germinate on receiving favorable environmental conditions. So then such seeds that wait for the environmental conditions can also be called as quiescent seeds, right? So I hope that the point of quiescent seeds is clear with you. Now let us have a look into the physiological condition of a quiescent seed, that is a seed which is waiting for the environmental conditions to be favorable. What is the actual condition of that quiescent seed, right? So these seeds are dry seeds, right? So basically these seeds are dry in nature, so they do not have any water right now, so they are not hydrated. These are dry seeds. These have metabolic activities that will be minimum. So as it is dry, as it has no water, so wouldn't be any activities or any kind of metabolic processes going on. It would be very minimum inside the seed. It will have a dry hard seed coat which will not allow the water to let in. The seed coat will also be impermeable to water and oxygen. So the seed coat will not allow water and oxygen to get in, and the seed coat and endosperm form a barrier for the growth of embryo. So in a quiescent seed, the seed coat and the endosperm, we know what is endosperm. Endosperm is the part of the seed which provides nutrition to the embryo, right? So sometimes the seed coat and the endosperm itself form barrier for the growth of the embryo, because of which the embryo is not able to come out, right? Then this is a very important point, that most part of embryo consists of potentially meristematic cells. So embryo actually consists of meristematic cells that are able to divide, right? But these will not divide and enlarge, and there would be minimum respiration. Though the embryo consists of meristematic cells, these are not going to divide and enlarge, and there would be minimum respiration, right? There would be minimum oxygen intake, and due to which the quiescent seed development does not take place. Now, why this happens that this will not divide and this will not enlarge though it is meristematic cell, and why it will happen that there is minimum respiration? So there are these following reasons due to which this can happen. One is less water availability. So one thing is that the seed is not receiving enough water to germinate. It is also not receiving enough of oxygen to germinate. There is no soluble food. Now see, the food that is present inside the seed in the endosperm is not a soluble food, right? So the food that is present there has to get converted to a soluble form, to a form which can be taken up by the embryo. So the form of food present actually inside the seed, that food might not be soluble food, because of which the embryo is not getting the food, and there might be presence of growth inhibitors in the hard seed coat, which might not be allowing the embryo to grow outwards. And also the concentration of hydrolytic enzymes might also be low. Now you might think that what could be the work of hydrolytic enzymes? So hydrolytic enzymes play a very important role in all the kinds of anabolic activities, right, and in all the kind of metabolic activities. So we will look into what are hydrolytic enzymes. So for now you just need to remember that if germination has to occur, the hydrolytic enzymes concentration must be high. So there might be cases when the concentration of hydrolytic enzymes is low, and this leads to failure of germination, right? So now we start with the understanding of phases of germination. So mainly there are 4 phases in the process of germination. That this is water uptake, respiration, mobilization of reserved food material, and emergence of seedling, right? So water uptake you can consider as phase 1, respiration as phase 2, and mobilization of reserved food material as phase 3, and third and fourth is emergence of seedling as the last phase, right? So the first and foremost requirement is the water uptake, is the imbibition, right? And after the water has been taken in, the seed also require oxygen, so there comes the term of respiration. And after oxygen, the embryo requires food, right? So as I told, the food in the endosperm is not a mobilized food. It is not a food that can move. It is not a food that is soluble. So the food reserves has to get mobilized so that the embryo can utilize it, and after that the last step is the emergence of seedling, that is after every changes has taken place. So then now the seedling are capable of growing. So we first of all start with the understanding of water uptake. So basically the seed germination starts with imbibition of water by hard seed coat. So we know that the seed has a very hard seed coat on its outside, right? So this hard seed coat needs to imbibe water, needs to take in water, which will help in the process of germination, right? So how does water imbibition takes place? There are certain hydrophilic groups like NH2COOH and OH, right, like amino group and carboxylic group and hydroxyl group. These are hydrophilic groups, right? So these groups are present in the seed coat of the seed. So the outer seed coat has these kind of substances. These groups are called hydrophilic groups because these can attract water, right? So hydrophilic groups are the groups that can attract water. So such kind of groups are present in the hard seed coat. So these hydrophilic groups can attract the dipolar water molecule, right? We know that the water molecule is dipolar. So what will happen, that these water molecules, the H2O molecules, due to the presence of these hydrophilic groups can get attracted towards the seed coat, right? So water molecules start rushing towards the seed coat because of the presence of these hydrophilic groups. So these hydrophilic groups basically attract the water molecule and they form hydrated shells. Now what are hydrated shells? For example, if this is a hydrophilic group that we have considered here, so this is carboxylic group, right? So the carboxylic group is a hydrophilic group, and as it is hydrophilic, it is going to attract a large number of water molecule. So the carboxylic group will be totally covered with water molecules like this. So water molecules will form a circular arrangement around it, and this is called a hydrated shell, right? So this is hydrated shell in case of carboxylic acid. Similarly, the seed coat consists of all of these hydrophilic groups, and like for example NH2 will also become a hydrated shell, OH will also become a hydrated shell, and like this all of the hydrophilic groups will form hydrated shells, and this results in swelling of these substances. So ultimately, due to the water molecules attaching to these groups, these substances will swell, and this will be followed by intensive water uptake. So as these substances that are present in the seed coat, these substances they swell. So obviously as these substances are present in the seed coat is going to now imbibe intensive water, right? It will start taking in water, and this will lead to imbibition of water, right? So hydrophilic groups are responsible for water imbibition by formation of hydrated shells. Right now, due to imbibition of water, what will happen is that the seed coat will become more permeable to oxygen and water and less resistant to outward growth of embryo, right? Obviously these are the obvious changes that are going to come, is that the seed coat will now become more permeable to oxygen and water, right? Because the seed coat has swelled, the substances surrounding the seed coat has swelled. And second thing, that it will become less resistant to outward growth of embryo. Obviously as the seed coat will swell, so it is going to become less resistant to the outward growth of embryo. That means that it will allow the embryo to grow outside, it will not resist, right? So this is about water uptake, right? So this is the first phase where the seed has to take in water, imbibe water to swell and to perform all other metabolic activities, right? So now we move towards the understanding of respiration. So after water uptake, right, the first phase is over. That means the water has been taken in. So after water uptake, there is a rapid increase in respiratory rate. So as I told, due to the intake of water, the seed coat also becomes permeable to oxygen. So as it becomes permeable to oxygen, there is rapid increase in respiratory rate, right? We recently understood what is respiratory quotient, what is respiration, which means that the product of photosynthesis has to combine with oxygen molecule, right, to release carbon dioxide and energy, which is important for all other activities, right? So after water uptake there would be rapid increase in respiratory rate. So initially basically the respiration would be anaerobic respiration, because initial respiration is in absence of oxygen, because there might not be enough oxygen present. So then at that time, initially when oxygen is not available, it is possible that seed might be growing through anaerobic respiration. But later on soon, anaerobic respiration of seed will shift to aerobic respiration due to the availability of oxygen, right? So as the oxygen will start becoming available after the water uptake, right, so then the anaerobic respiration process of the seed will shift towards aerobic respiration. Now we already know that for respiration we need a respiratory substrate, right? It is the product of photosynthesis, usually carbohydrate, but it could be protein also or lipid also. So we need a respiratory substrate. That respiratory substrate need to combine with oxygen. So this is the requirement for for respiration, right? So in seeds the respiratory substrate is sometimes sucrose, right? Or it is sucrose in case of some monocots, right? So this sucrose is basically provided by endosperm, right? Now we all know what is endosperm, but still for your understanding, this is a maize seed, right? And this that you see, the inside structure is the embryo, and the whole part surrounding the embryo is the endosperm, right? So endosperm is actually the part that provides nutrients to embryo. So from here there is stored food material present, and this stored food material reaches to the embryo for the embryo to grow, right? So endosperm, it surrounds the embryo and provides nutrition in the form of starch. So in the endosperm there is nutrients present, and these nutrients is provided to the embryo in the form of starch, right? So this sucrose that is obtained as respiratory substrate, it is actually provided by endosperm. So the endosperm has the respiratory substrate, and this sucrose it acts as respiratory substrate, and it combines with oxygen for the process of respiration, right? So after water uptake, respiration will occur and oxygen will become available to the seeds, and this will lead to the process of respiration, whereby respiration the seed will acquire more energy for performing all the kind of metabolic activities. Right, now we move towards the understanding of mobilization of reserved food material, right? So as I told that the food present in the seed is actually is not in the mobilized form. So food present in the seed has to be converted to mobilized form, that is, it has to be converted to a form which becomes available to the embryo, which becomes easy for the embryo to take in, right? So it has to be a movable form. Mobilized means movable form. So food present has to be converted into mobilized form. And why is mobilization important? Because it provides, we need mobilization of food materials to provide building blocks for development of embryo. Now see what these food materials could be. It could be carbohydrate, it could be proteins, it could be lipid, it could be some inorganic material. Mostly these are the food materials. So these are the mobilization of these materials is actually important to provide building blocks for the development of embryo. Now we know what are building blocks. These are amino acids obtained which leads to the formation of protein. So we know that proteins are very important for the development of any organism. So likewise building blocks are important for the development of embryo. To provide energy for biosynthetic processes, So when mobilization takes place, energy is also formed, and this is important. This energy is used in the biosynthetic processes of various types. And then is the mobilization of nucleic acids also important, because nucleic acids are important for the control of protein synthesis and overall embryo development. So we know what are nucleic acids. These are the genetic material, DNA, RNA, that are present inside the nucleus, and we know that these are the controller, right? They control the protein synthesis process and the overall embryo development. These are the genetic material, right? So these are also very important to get mobilized. So these three are the main important point why mobilization of this food reserve material is important. Now, as I told, the reserved food that we are talking about are nucleic acids, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and inorganic material. So these are the main food materials that are already present in the seeds, in the endosperm, right? But these are not soluble, these are not mobilized. So first all of these has to get converted to a mobilized form, to a soluble form, to be available to the embryo, right? So we are going to now understand each of this one after the another, right? So the first thing that we are going to understand now is nucleic acids, right? How nucleic acids mobilize. So usually in monocots, during imbibition stage of seed germination, that is when the imbibition of water is going on, during that stage the DNA and RNA content, right? These are the nucleic acids, the DNA and RNA. What happens is that the DNA and RNA content decrease rapidly in case of endosperm, but it increases rapidly in embryo. Now see why this happens, you can very easily relate, is that endosperm is nutrition providing organ and embryo is nutrition receiving organ. So during this imbibition stage, the another change that starts taking place is that the DNA and RNA content that is present in the endosperm, it starts getting transported to the embryo. Now this is the reason that why the DNA and RNA content decrease in endosperm and why it increase in embryo, because the endosperm transportation from the endosperm, transportation of DNA and RNA content takes place to the embryo, right? Because this has to happen for all the metabolic activities to start. Now the aleurone layer also has good amount of RNA that appears after 16 hours, right? We'll understand what is aleurone layer. For now we understand this part. The another change that comes in the seed is that before cell division, if the seed is observed, there is increase in RNA and protein content, right? So cell division से पहले there is increase in RNA and protein content, and during cell division and after cell division there is increase in DNA content. Why is this happening? Because before cell division we require more RNA and protein, right? And during cell division RNA is getting converted to DNA, and therefore the DNA content would be more during cell division, and it would be, and before cell division RNA and protein content would be more, right? So this is also relatable because during cell division DNA formation will take place, and it is obvious that as DNA formation will take place, its content will increase, right? But before cell division it is the RNA and protein content that is more, because DNA formation is not taking place, right? So This is one thing to remember. This is another change that happens in the seed. Now this is a seed of actually sorghum, and this is the embryo part. The green part is the embryo which is going to become a new plant. This is the endosperm which provides nutrition to the embryo. And see, this is the alluron layer. The outer layer of endosperm, is called alluron layer, and the outer layer of seed is called the seed coat. Right, so what is mentioned here, that alluron layer, which is the outer layer of endosperm, right, it will have good amount of RNA that appears after 16 hours, and this happens due to de novo synthesis. Now what is de novo synthesis? I think you all must already be knowing that de novo synthesis is the synthesis of something that happens totally fresh, right? So when I say de novo synthesis, so it refers to the synthesis of complex molecules from simple molecules, right? So this is basically something that is formed very new, not present already, this is formed new, then it is called de novo synthesis. So in the alluron layer of endosperm, good amount of RNA appears, right, after 16 hours, right, and the good amount of RNA helps in the during cell division and increases DNA content, right? So this is all related to each other, and these are the changes that takes place in seed during seed germination, right? Now we move towards the understanding of carbohydrates. So what happens that in the endosperm, insoluble carbohydrates are the important food reserves of cereals. So carbohydrate as food reserves is an example of cereals. So most of our cereals, that is sorghum, maybe rice, maybe wheat, right, all of these have insoluble carbohydrate, right, and all of these have their food reserves as carbohydrates, right? So in the endosperm, this carbohydrate is insoluble. So this insoluble carbohydrate has to become soluble to be available to the embryo. So what happens is that in the endosperm, actually the carbohydrate that is present is starch. Starch, as we know, is a polysaccharide, right? This is a complex form, right? So starch gets converted to maltose. These are the changes that takes place in the seed during seed germination, right? So starch gets converted to maltose in the presence of enzyme alpha amylase and beta amylase. These are the enzymes that can break starch into maltose. So starch is a polysaccharide, it gets converted into a disaccharide, maltose. So maltose is a disaccharide. So this that is happening is basically a process of hydrolysis. So this is a process of hydrolysis where starch combines with water molecule, and in the presence of an enzyme amylase gets converted to maltose, right? So this is polysaccharide, it gets converted into simpler form, which is a disaccharide, maltose. Now this maltose gets converted to glucose, right? So now glucose is a monosaccharide, right, and this happens in the presence of enzyme maltase, right? So what is maltase? Maltase is an enzyme that breaks down maltose, right? So maltose combines with, this is again hydrolysis, maltose combines with water molecule and in the presence of enzyme maltase gets converted to glucose, right? And this glucose then gets converted to soluble sucrose, and transported to scutellum, right? So what we actually needed is the soluble form of food, right? So after the formation of glucose, this gets converted into soluble sucrose and is transported to scutellum. So scutellum, now you might think that what is scutellum? Scutellum is like a modified leaf like, very small leaf like structure in the seed. This is responsible, scutellum is responsible for obtaining nutrition from the endosperm. So what is the work of scutellum? It obtains nutrition from the endosperm and provides to the embryo, right? So scutellum is something that acts like a mediator to provide nutrition to the embryo, right? So therefore this soluble sucrose is transported to scutellum, where it is glucose is converted to soluble sucrose and transported to scutellum, right? So this scutellum will now provide this soluble sucrose to the embryo, right? Now during germination, what happens is that the embryonic axis or the embryo will secrete GA, right? What is GA? GA is gibberellic acid, and this GA is secreted in the alluron layer. So embryonic axis or embryo secretes GA in the alluron layer. Now alluron layer is the outer layer of the endosperm. In that layer, gibberellic acid is secreted, and this gibberellic acid is responsible for the de novo synthesis of alpha amylase. Now what is de novo synthesis? Something that is formed totally new, right? So this is called de novo synthesis. So this GA secretion is important because this is responsible for the formation of alpha amylase. So you need to understand that this step is important because the GA secretion is important because it forms alpha amylase, and alpha amylase is something that is responsible for the conversion of starch to maltose, right? So these steps are happening simultaneously because more alpha amylase has to form for the continuation of this process. So this GA is very important to get secreted, as this GA will lead to the formation of alpha amylase, and alpha amylase will continue this process of starch to maltose. Now if any time during this period this GA removal takes place, if we remove the GA during this period, what will happen is that there would be rapid fall in the concentration of alpha amylase. This has been studied in experiments that if we remove GA during this process, right, during the process of seed germination, so there would be rapid fall in alpha amylase. Why? Because as I told, if GA is not there, alpha amylase will not form. So if we remove GA, alpha amylase will not form, and this will lead to the rapid fall of alpha amylase, and if alpha amylase is not there, maltose is not going to be formed. So the process will get hindered. But this process can again be restored if we supply external GA. Then the process will be restored, because all we need for the formation of alpha amylase is external GA or GA. So this can be provided externally, artificially, so that the process of alpha amylase formation starts, and this leads to the formation of starch and maltose. Right, now beta amylase is not, the beta amylase formation does not take place like alpha amylase. So beta amylase is already present in inactive form in the seed. So as the process of seed germination starts, it gets activated by itself. So it does not need any kind of secretion. It is already present in inactive form, and as it gets activated as the germination process will start, it will get activated on its own. Right, so I hope that this part is also clear with you about carbohydrates, where the insoluble carbohydrate starch gets converted into soluble sucrose for the embryo to germinate. Now we move towards the understanding of lipids. Right, so we can find lipids in plants like castor beans, peanuts, etc. We know plants that gives oil, right? So all those oil plants have reserve food material in the form of lipids. So these plants, they store reserved food in the form of neutral lipids or fat. We call it neutral lipid or fat as the reserved food material, right? And so how does it get mobilized? Is that fats gets converted to fatty acids and glycerol in the presence of enzyme lipases. So what lipase does is it breaks fat, right? It works in breaking of the fat. Now again, this is a hydrolysis process where fat it combines with water, and lipase acts, and this leads to formation of fatty acids and glycerols. Now this fatty acids and glycerols gets converted to acetyl CoA by the process of beta oxidation, right? So we are not going to understand beta oxidation right now. Beta oxidation is a very long process, so you already have this in your syllabus in the biochemistry part, so you will be understanding it there. So for now you only need to understand that fatty acids and glycerols are leading to the formation of acetyl CoA by the process of beta oxidation, and this acetyl CoA gets converted to sucrose via glyoxylate cycle. So glyoxylate cycle is also a big cycle. This is an anabolic cycle, right, which leads to the formation of carbohydrate. So sucrose is a carbohydrate. So from fats, carbohydrates is formed, which is soluble, and the cycle that leads to the formation of carbohydrate is called glyoxylate cycle. We are not going to understand this in deep, for you can only remember this for now, right? So fats breakdown takes place because of enzyme lipase, and this leads to the formation of fatty acids and glycerol. Fatty acids and glycerols by the beta oxidation process leads to the formation of acetyl CoA, and acetyl CoA via the glyoxylate cycle forms sucrose. Now this lipase is also synthesized de novo by the secretion of gibberellic acid. See, gibberellic acid is very important. This GA is not present in ungerminated seeds, but GA is present in seeds that are undergoing germination or that has to undergo germination. In only such seeds GA is present, because this GA is activating the enzymes. Right, now also we need to understand that these enzymes are hydrolytic enzymes. The enzymes that we saw as of now, the beta amylase, alpha amylase, right, the lipases, the maltase, all of these are hydrolytic enzymes because these are acting to break the molecule by combination with combining with water. So these are, the lipase is also synthesized de novo by gibberellic acid. Now as I told that acetyl CoA gets converted to sucrose via the glyoxylate cycle. So glyoxylate cycle enzymes are also needed because glyoxylate cycle is a big cycle and it requires certain enzymes to continue. So these enzymes are also synthesized de novo during early stages of germination. Now when the process of fats to sucrose is taking place, during this stage, during the early stage of germination, these enzymes already start synthesizing de novo. That is the new synthesis of this enzyme starts, and these enzymes will disappear when the stored fat has been consumed and the embryo has received the soluble substance. right? So these enzymes will only be present up till the time when the fats has to get converted to sucrose. Now as this stored fat is totally converted and converted to sucrose and consumed by the embryo, then the enzymes of this cycle will disappear because these enzymes are no more needed, right? So this is how the changes in lipid as reserved food material takes place in the seeds. Now we move towards the understanding of proteins. Now we know what plants have proteins. Plants like mung, pulses plants, right? All the plants, the leguminous plants that we know have proteins. So seeds of such plants, they actually store their food in the form of proteins. Now what happens? Proteins are converted to amino acids by the enzyme peptidases. So this is also a hydrolytic process, a hydrolytic cleavage, where proteins by combining with water molecule in presence of peptidase, which is a hydrolytic enzyme, leads to the formation of amino acids. So this is a breaking down process. Protein gets converted to amino acids. Now these amino acids can go into two things. One is that the process of deamination will take place. What is deamination? Deamination is the process where one amino group, that is NH2 group, gets removed from amino acid. When from one amino acid a single amino group gets removed, or more than that, 2 or 3 amino groups get removed, then we call it the deamination process, right? Deamination means removal of amino group. So the amino acids can go into the process of deamination. And next, another thing that can happen is that these amino acids can be utilized in the synthesis of new proteins, because we already know that proteins are formed of amino acids. So these amino acids can combine in various ways to form new proteins. And by the deamination process, we will receive the seed will receive some amount of energy, and this energy will be provided to the embryo for its all kind of activities. So deamination can provide energy to the embryo, whereas in the other process, new proteins can be formed by utilizing amino acids, right? Now these peptidases are also synthesized de novo, either by GA or by some other activities. Now during this process, there is also active synthesis of many enzymes, many proteins and RNA. All of these are synthesized, and during this process polysomes are involved, right? So what are polysomes? For those who do not know, polysomes are chain of ribosomes. So the synthesis of all of this is connected to polysomes. Polysomes synthesize this, right? So polysomes are chain of ribosomes. And so whether these polysomes are already present in the seed or are synthesized de novo is not known. This is a question mark, right? So we do not know that what is the origin of these polysomes, but when these things have to be synthesized, these polysomes are involved, but polysomes are already present or are synthesized de novo is not yet known, right? So this is how the changes in protein takes place during seeds germination. And now we understand what is inorganic material mobilization. So the inorganic material that we are talking about are salts like phosphate, calcium, magnesium, potassium. These all are called salts, right? So these are stored in the seed in the form of phytin. So these are basically salts, and these salts are stored in the seed in the form of a molecule called phytin, right? And these are mobilized during germination due to the activity of enzymes phosphatases and phytases. So phyteins are actually very important, because phyteins are actually a combination of all these salts, and phyteins can activate a number of important enzymes. So we need enzymes throughout the process, and many of the enzymes are activated by phyteins. So phyteins are important to be mobilized, and these are mobilized by enzymes phosphatases and phytases. So enzymes that can break down phytene, right, enzymes that can break down all of these salts, the phytene molecule, are phosphatases and phytases, right. So this is about inorganic material. Now with this the mobilization of food material part is over. This is how mobilization takes place in different food reserves, and after mobilization there is emergence of seedling. So after all the changes that we saw right now, that is the changes in protein, carbohydrates, nucleic acids and all, after all of these changes, this results in splitting of the seed coat. The seed coat splits, right, because all the changes has occurred, water has been imbibed. This result in the splitting of the seed coat, and this will lead to the emergence of the seedling. What is seedling? Seedling is the very new little plant that comes out of the seed. So the emergence of seedling will take place. So very first thing that comes out is the radicle. So first radicle comes out and it grows downward. So the first thing to come out is radicle, which grows downward. So radicle is something that will lead to the formation of root, and later on plumule grows, which grows upward, right. So the plumule is something which is formed after radicle, and this will lead to the formation of shoot. Now this will lead to the continuous growth of the seedlings as all the nutrients are provided. So the seedlings will come out of the soil and they will get exposed to the light, and they will develop its own photosynthetic apparatus, right. This is what has to happen. The seedling has to come out of the soil, and as it gets exposed to the sunlight, so it will start forming its photosynthetic apparatus, by which we mean that it will start having its own leaves, because leaves has chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is something which is responsible for photosynthesis. It has chloroplast, and this is the photosynthetic apparatus, right. So the seedling will ultimately lead to the formation of its own photosynthetic apparatus. So this is the last stage of seed germination, where the seedling forms its own photosynthetic apparatus. Now let us look into what are the factors affecting seed germination. So the most important factors responsible for seed germination are two things, that is seed viability and lifespan, right. So we already know what is seed viability. Seed viability is the ability of the seeds to germinate. So what is the capability of the seed to germinate defines its seed viability. So some seeds are more viable, some seeds are less viable. So this is also a factor affecting the seed germination. Some seeds can grow only for a certain period, like 1 hour or 2 hours. Some seeds can be viable for even 4000 years or 400 years. So this is about seed viability. This is also an important factor. And lifespan is also an important factor. So lifespan is when a seed in good condition and it is stored will last at least 1 year, and depending on the plant it may last for many years. So actually seed viability and lifespan are related. So seed viability also defines the lifespan, where it tells that a seed can survive how many years. right? So these are important factors, and this is basically determined by genetic makeup. So every seed, every plant, every type of plant is not going to have the same type of seed viability and lifespan, because this is totally depend upon its genetic makeup, how the plant is made, it belongs to which species. Depending upon that, its genetic makeup, it will have seed viability and lifespan. Now the other factors that are responsible for germination are water, atmospheric composition, carbon dioxide, ethylene, pollutants, temperature, light, and soil conditions as well, right? So we are very quickly going to understand each of this one after the another. So let us first understand how water can affect seed germination. So we already learned that the very first phase of seed germination is imbibition of water. So if water is not available, then germination will not take place. So availability of water actually depends upon the composition of the medium in which the germination is taking place, right? So seed is usually present in certain kind of medium. Say it might be present in a soil medium, in a medium of water, it might be present in a medium of sucrose, right? So the water availability totally depends upon the composition of medium. So what is the medium that is present and what it is composed of, it depends upon this. So if the medium consists of more salts, right, if the medium has more salts, then the availability of water decreases due to osmotic effect. So all of you already know what is osmosis, right? So we know because of osmosis, when salts are more, water availability will be less, right? And when salts are less, so water availability would be more. So as if a medium will have more salts, so the availability of water will decrease. Now the water, one another thing that forms barrier for the water to enter is the presence of hard seed coat. This is a major barrier, because if the seed coat is hard, then the water will not enter in, because the seed coat would be impermeable to water, right? So water is a very important factor. Now the another factor is atmospheric composition. So what is atmospheric composition? All those things that are included in the atmosphere. So it could be all of the gases, it could be pollutants, it could be oxygen or carbon dioxide, right? So let us understand this in case of oxygen. Now we know that oxygen is very important, it is a very necessary requirement for respiration by the seeds, because we know that aerobic respiration can only take place in presence of oxygen. So if the oxygen content increase, it is very obvious that germination will increase, right? So this is directly proportional, that is oxygen content increase will lead to germination increase. But different species have different oxygen requirement. For example, some species these germinate better in about 20% oxygen. So some species require at least about 20% or 20% oxygen. For example, xanthium and cereals. Whereas some species grow better in 80% oxygen also. So these are examples like Typha and Cynodon dactylon. Now you know what is Typha, right? We have understood this in hydrosear and xerosear part, where Typha is a plant that is like growing, roots are in water and the whole body is outside water, right? So they are growing in a kind of condition where oxygen might not be completely available. So these species can grow better in 8% oxygen also, and Cynodon dactylon is a grass, right? So very simple, the increase in oxygen will lead to increase in germination, but the oxygen requirement also varies in different species. So these are the examples where some species can grow in 20% oxygen, whereas some can grow even in 8% oxygen. And some seeds like rice, these can germinate anaerobically, giving an example of anaerobic respiration. Now, very quickly, let us look into CO2. Now, CO2 will act completely reverse than oxygen, right? It has totally reverse action than oxygen. So, if CO2 content will increase, it is very obvious that the seeds will fail to germinate. That is, the germination process will decrease. But there are certain exceptions in this case also, where with increase in CO2, though there might be increase in CO2, there is no effect on the species if oxygen level is maintained, right? So what they are saying is that even if CO2 level increases, but if we maintain the oxygen level properly, then this is not going to make any change in the germination process of that species, because oxygen level is maintained. So even if you keep on increasing CO2, changes will not take place. An example of such plant is Atriplex. Atriplex is also called salt bush. Maybe you can more google about this plant to identify what is Atriplex. It is a bushy plant, right, and it grows in salty area. Now certain the another kind of exception is where with increase in carbon dioxide there is increase in germination, and example of such plant is Phleum pratense, right? So these are the two exceptions that may happen, but generally if carbon dioxide increase, seeds fail to germinate, right? So this is Phleum pratense is a grass species. This kind of inflorescence is present in Phleum pratense. You might have seen it maybe somewhere, right? So this is it about CO2. Now let us understand about ethylene. Very simple, that with the increase in ethylene concentration, germination decreases. So this means that if ethylene concentration would be lower, then germination will increase. So lower concentration of ethylene is okay, but if the concentration increase, germination is going to decrease. And also in the seeds there is endogenous ethylene present, that is ethylene present inside the seed. These also influence the process of germination. And the another thing is about pollutants. Now we know there are many gases present in the atmosphere. These are NO2, nitrous oxide, nitrous dioxide, right, sulfur dioxide, ozone, ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, right? All of these are various pollutants. So these also influence the process of germination, and mostly all of these pollutants, they inhibit the process of germination. They are going to decrease the process of germination, but only the exception of NO2, where NO2 can increase germination in very low concentrations. So NO2 if present in very low concentration can increase germination, but if its concentration increases, then it leads to decrease in germination, right? So this is it about atmospheric pressure. Now we start understanding about temperature. So again a simple thing, that with decrease in temperature, germination will get inhibited. So if the temperature decreases, this will lead to inhibition of germination. You can very simply relate this to the utilization of fridge at our home, right? What happens, we store something at low temperature in the fridge, its activity becomes slow, and this is why it does not rot, right? If you put the for example, if you have kept some seeds to sprout, right, outside, a day you kept it in water, but if you the next day you keep that seeds inside the fridge, it will not germinate. You will not see any kind of sprouts, because the temperature has decreased, which is causing the germination of inhibitor, the inhibition of germination. right? So and if you again keep it at room temperature, if you keep it closed in a if you keep it closed in a vessel, or maybe in a cotton cloth, in a wet cloth, you will see that germination starts again, right? So with decrease in temperature, germination process becomes inhibited. So usually the optimum temperature for tropical species is 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, and it may happen that above this range the germination may stop. So this is the optimum temperature, 25 to 30 or 25 to 35 degrees Celsius. Above this range the germination might not occur. So if temperature increase, this has two effects. One is it has been known to have some effect on membrane structure. So if the temperature increase, this leads to changes in membrane structure of the seed, and it also increases the leakiness of the seeds. Leakiness, by leakiness I mean that the seed becomes more permeable, right? So if you increase the temperature, it will favor seed germination. If you decrease the temperature, it will inhibit seed germination, right? So this is it about temperature. Now we understand about light. Now this is very simple. Different effect is seen in different species, and we have already learnt it. The three types of species based upon light requirement. Positively photoblastic seeds, they do not they require light, certain amount of light for their growth, for germination. These are Daucus carota and Lectuca sativa like plants. Then negatively photoblastic, they do not require light, they require dark period. So these are plants like Datura. And then these are photoblastic seeds. They are indifferent of light or dark, they can grow in any kind of situation, for example sorghum, right? And also the quality of light is an important factor. So we know that there are pigments PR and PFR. So PR stimulates germination because PR absorbs red light, which leads to the formation of PFR, and PFR actually inhibits germination because PFR absorbs far red lights and gets converted to PR. We have very nicely understood this in the dormancy part, so not going deep into it. You only need to remember that how the quality of light can stimulate or inhibit the process of germination. Right, now the very last thing about factors affecting germination is soil conditions. Now the factors that are included in here are water holding capacity of the soil, aeration of the soil, and salinity of the soil. So what do we mean by water holding capacity? That is the capacity of the soil to hold the water. How much can a soil hold water? So if the soil can hold good amount of water, then this will help the seed in germination, right? Because seeds require water to germinate. Then aeration of the soil, by this we mean that how much oxygen can diffuse inside the soil, how much air, that is how much oxygen can diffuse in the soil. If oxygen can diffuse properly, if it is in good amount in the soil, then this will help in the seed germination. And salinity of soil is the salt content of the soil. Now if the salt content of the soil increase, it reduces germination because more the more the soil, less the water. So if more salt condition becomes, the plant instead will not be able to get water and will only have saline environment. So this will lead to the decrease in germination. Germination will not take place because water would be less available. Osmotic effect will start, right? So yeah, this is it about the factors affecting seed germination. So I hope that this is clear with you, and yeah, so best of luck and prepare for your exam. Thank you.